When I was planning the upgrade for our church's media room, the first thing I did was skim a handful of cheap HDMI splitters that promised 8 in 16 out 4 under $100. Within a week I was staring at a fuzzy picture, a lagging audio feed, and a mounting plate that didn't even line up with the wall box. It's a classic case of buyer's remorse, spending pennies on a bargain only to pay the price in time and headaches. So the question I kept coming back to was, does the MT-VIKI 8x8 HDMI matrix feel like a smarter buy, or am I just swapping one set of problems for another? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The first thing that stops the cheap and cheerful vibe from creeping in is the way MT-VIKI frames this unit as a professional-grade distribution platform. It's not just a passive splitter, it's an actual matrix with true 8-input, 16-output routing, and it even adds a pair of power-over-cable, POCI, receivers right out of the box. For a venue that needs to pull feeds from a handful of sources, say a laptop, a media player, a livestream box, and a Blu-ray player, and send each one to any combination of displays, a matrix is the only sensible architecture. The alternative would be to buy multiple splitters, daisy-chain them, and hope the signals stay in sync, which in my experience quickly turns into a spaghetti mess of latency and EDID mismatches. Let's talk about the typical setup you'd see in a church, a conference hall, or a small production suite. You have a central rack with all your source devices, then you run a single Cat 678 cable to each display location. The MT-VIKI's POCI design lets you feed both power and HDMI over that same cable, up to 230 feet. That means one less wall plate, one less power outlet, and a cleaner look overall. In a real-world test, I ran the long-run cable from the rack to a projector on the far side of the sanctuary, and the picture stayed rock-solid 4K at 60Hz, with no dropouts or color banding. The audio remained perfectly in sync, and the matrix's built-in audio extraction gave me a clean 5.1 feed that I could route to the sound system without any extra converters. Control is another area where the MT-VIKI shows its value. You can switch inputs via the web GUI, which works on any device with a browser, no need to lug around a dedicated keypad. For larger installations, the RS-232 port lets you hook the matrix up to Crestron or AMX control panels, which is a nice touch if you already have that ecosystem. There's also a basic IR remote for quick manual changes. The flexibility here matters because most AV installers will have at least 2 different ways they need to control the system: a permanent schedule from the control room, and an ad hoc manual change during a live event. The matrix handles both without fuss. Now, who should actually consider buying this thing? If you're running a single screen setup, or you only need one source duplicated to a handful of monitors, you're probably better off with a straightforward HDMI splitter, cheaper, simpler, and with fewer points of failure. The MT-VIKI shines when you have multiple sources that need to be routed in different combinations to multiple displays. Think of a conference venue where one room is showing a live keynote, another room is looping the sponsor videos, and a third room is displaying a live poll feed. In that scenario, the ability to assign any input to any output, and even send one input to several outputs simultaneously, becomes a real productivity booster. It's also a good fit for a small production studio that wants to feed a camera feed to both a monitor for the director and a streaming encoder without buying a separate router. On the flip side, there are a few practical drawbacks. The matrix itself does not do any scaling or format conversion. It expects all sources to be already compatible with 4K at 60Hz. If you have a legacy 1080p device, you'll need an external scaler before the signal hits the matrix, which adds cost and another piece of hardware to manage. Also, while the web GUI is intuitive, it can be a bit sluggish on older routers, especially if you're trying to switch several inputs in quick succession. In my testing, the latency between command and picture change was about a second, which is fine for scheduled events but might be noticeable in a live switching scenario. Finally, the unit does not include any built-in redundancy. If one of the POCI receivers fails, you lose both video and power to that display. That's not a deal breaker for most small venues, but it's something to keep in mind if uptime is mission critical. Another subtle point is the EDID management. The matrix automatically learns the display capabilities and presents a matching EDID to the source, which prevents the common no-signal issue when a source tries to push a resolution that a display can't handle. In practice, this means you can walk into a room, plug in a new laptop, and the matrix will sort out the handshake without you.